Today we're working on the clamp plate assembly, and this is the upper leaf that goes on the bending brake, of course. And the first thing we're going to do is the end plates. So we've got two of them. They start off being 1/4 inch thick, 3x6 pieces, 1 3/4 inches tall. Let's get this one out of the way. Just a 45-degree angle off of that. I've got the first hole is 3/8 diameter, 3/4 inch in and 3/4 inches up. That's 375. And we just need to mark our 60-degree front angle on there. That'll go right there. And we'll go ahead and cut and drill 2 of those. Now what I'm probably going to do is I want to verify this dimension. But we'll probably go and drill our holes, and then we'll go back and clamp them together and cut. Well, we'll clamp them together, drill our 2 holes so they match, trim off the back edge and the front edge. We'll verify that front edge so we've got hole distance, because that's the pivot assembly right there, so it goes all the way through, and the angle iron leaf plate, the front plate, rests right on top of that, so it'll have to come right to the edge of that. So we'll drill our holes first. Well, I've drilled my 2 holes. I've got a 5/8 here and a 3/8 here, and I've actually moved this over because the front edge of the leaf will sit right along this edge and it'll rest on there, and everything will be welded in place. So that's 1/4 inch thick, so we're actually going to move our line. Our line was originally here. We've moved it over to give us a little more room. We'll go ahead and trim these 2 corners, and then we'll just grind everything flush so they match, and we'll be done with those parts. Well, we've got our 2 end plates cut, drilled and tapped, and the edges cut and ground on them. We'll still polish them up and contour them a little bit more after we get it all assembled, but this is the way it fits together. This will be our link point at the back. That's held on with a 3/8 inch bolt, and we've got our 5/8 rod that will come up through there, and then it will set on there approximately like that. We'll have to make adjustments to it, but that's basically the way it sits in there somewhere, and the link will move up and down to pinch our material. Anyway, the end plates are done, and what else have we accomplished? We've cut our 5/8 rod, 61 inches long, and that's the point that runs through there from side to side. And our 3x3 by 1/4 inch angle is our leaf, or our top plate, the leaf there. And I'll go back and radius this edge, one of the edges, whichever one's the better one. It needs to be straight. That's where your accuracy is going to be, but they want a 1/4 inch radius on the top of this plate because that's going to rest on your aluminum. So you want it nice and radiused and straight so that your aluminum doesn't mar up and mark when you bend it. But anyway, that's cut to length. I've got a piece of, it's basically 5/8 rod. It's a piece of material that I had that I've cut to 5 inches or 5 foot. It will get bent in the middle, and it'll be the tension rod that sits on top. I've got that done, and a piece of 5/8 all thread or ready rod, 8 inches long. It's for goes on the tension rod itself, between the tension rod and the angle iron, and there's the other end of the pipe that it fits in. So that's the tension rod. So we've got everything cut for the top leaf. Hello folks, I'm Dan. This is part 4, I believe, of the bending brake. A couple of mistakes that I made along the way, and I'll explain them, and I'm going to make a couple of changes. I've made a couple of changes already to it, and I've changed the design just a little bit from what the plans actually show. When I welded the leaf together, I welded it on the welding table. I should have actually used the bed of the brake itself to use that as alignment for the leaf when I assembled it, or at least tacked it together. I ended up with about a 1/16 of an inch gap on this end of the bed, which I ground out. I went ahead and ground the edge of this leaf full length, and I've got it within a tenth, but I'm going to do things a little bit different. I've made a design change there that will accomplish a couple of things for me, I think. The other thing I did is when I welded the angle on, I welded it flush with the bottom edge of the end plates, and this edge of the leaf actually needs to protrude down probably 1/4 of an inch from the bottom of those end plates. So if I was going to weld it up again, what I would advise doing is shimming up the end plates 1/4 or 3/8 of an inch on each end, then set your leaf on so it would actually rest on your bed, and then tack it in place. That way you should get that clearance. What I'm actually going to do is I've set the leaf itself back about 1/4 of an inch, or approximately 1/4 of an inch, and I'm going to put another 1/4 inch. I've got some 1/4 by 1.5" flat bar, and I'm going to polish the bottom edges of that, and then I'm going to actually bolt it to the leaf itself. So that'll bring this leaf up a little bit and give me a nice edge that actually would be a replaceable edge if I were ever to have to replace it. I'm going to bolt it in place on top of the existing leaf, and I'm going to put socket head cap screws every 6 inches. I'm going to match drill them, and there'll be 10 holes down the sides. I'm going to go ahead and tap the leaf itself, and then I'll take it apart and oversize the leaf on top, or the edge that I'm going to put on top. That'll give me some adjustment in that leaf itself to make sure I've got alignment right. But I'll go ahead and fix my hinge points to make sure they're in their position, the position where they go, and then I'll go ahead and attach that leaf. So those are the changes the changes that I'm going to make. If I were building it again, I would take this angle iron and actually tilt it back a little bit more to give it that kind of an angle, whereas now it's fairly steep. So it's probably, we don't even get a 45-degree bend off of there before we bottom out. I would rotate that back a little bit to give it a little more clearance there. So those are my mistakes and how I'd remedy it and what I would change on there. I'm going to take you around to the end. I've got the linkage set in place. Nothing's welded up yet, but we've kind of test fit everything to make sure it's going to work the way I want it to. And we'll bring you around and show you that. Okay, this is a pivot assembly for the leaf and the tension rods. This is our hinge point here. I still have to radius these. Like I say, everything's just rough fit in place right now. This is your pivot point, and it adjusts forward and back on your leaf, so you can loosen this and it'll actually pivot, well, in an arc actually, but you can move your leaf. So that's your adjustment forward and back. This is your tension on it. These have to be welded up. It shows this block going through, and this adjusts your tension up and down as this cams around. This isn't welded up yet, but it will cam like that to raise and lower your leaf and to apply tension to it. When it's all in place, that will be welded up in line with center of that, and there's a handle that comes out here, and that's your adjustment to lock and unlock your leaf, raise and lower it. This pivot point here, they just show as a block. There's a pin that goes out through the back side, and they show that having a cotter key through it, so it's got to have a little bit of swivel. I changed that. I actually threaded that shaft for 1/2-13, and I'll adjust the length on it, and I've got a 1/2-13 nylock nuts to go on there, so we can tighten those up and they'll stay in tension. I'll fit those down. I'll probably do away with these washers because we don't need them. And the handle goes on top. As I said before, this welds on. The handle that welds on here, I've taken this pivot assembly, and they show either a grease fitting or an oil hole in here. I drilled and tapped it for a small grease fitting. It's drilled all the way through, so we can inject grease in there. And on the pivot assembly, they show an oil hole. I drilled it all the way through to line up with this hole, so when we shoot grease into it, why it will lube that as well. And that goes on. I may drill and tap the end of that shaft just for a retainer to hold that in position. I'm not sure. It's not necessary, but I may do it. It can't go anyplace when it's there. That will slide on. So the next time I bring it back, we'll have this stuff welded up and fitted in place, or fitting it in place. So I've got a little better idea of what's going on. Once I get these welded up and everything fitted, we're going to go ahead and trim the back of this. We'll radius these front edges so we don't have sharp edges sticking out. And then we'll move on to the bending leaf that goes on the front. Thanks for taking the time to watch.